Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in this wonderful world. Welcome to another EUDF LinkedIn live session. Today on the topic of no budgets, no KPIs, no OKRs, can that work? I'm very interested in that too. I'm very excited about today's session. I know I'm always excited, but today a little bit extra excited. And I'm welcoming with that Francesco Frugiuele from Milan, who was a senior executive for over 20 years in traditional management practice. And despite the success you had, Francesco, I think you came to actually change direction a little bit to say, okay, it might not be sustainable and we need to look for different ways. Francesco is an expert on performance management, OKRs, organization design and development, and the founder of Kopernicana. Hello, Francesco.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good,
Great
thanks.
having you. And we also welcome Haluk Can Hur from Istanbul, who is a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Latro, a chemical solutions company in Istanbul, and is probably one of the most progressive companies in the world right now in terms of how they organize and what beautiful, wonderful things you're doing. And I always like to introduce you also, well, the only thing, I'm talking about you like, okay, there's a lot of great things, but bottom line, you fired yourself as a boss. That's enough about yourself. But we will dive a little bit deeper into who you both are. And for that, welcome. And it's great to have you here. So.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
I would like to give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a little better. So if you could just say a couple of words about yourself, that would be amazing. And Francesco, Haluk, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for the introduction, Tina. It's a great pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm Haluk. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have several businesses in different fields. The main one is the chemical company, as you were mentioning, running with self-management. I'm having a 14-year-old daughter that I love her. She's like everything to me. And I in my free time, I'm a kite surfer, sailing. I'm a sailor and snowboarder. And I really like this entrepreneurship and the startups. So I'm an angel investor from the other perspective, and I'm a mentor to some founders of the new startups. I try to share my experiences there. More or less, this is who I
am. Francesco, what about yourself?
Well, I've done management job for a long time, and I'm an engineer too. I started as an engineer, like hardcore mechanical engineer. So management was pretty much resonating with engineering, because everything has to be a machine-like equipment, even people and organizations. So I started like that, and I ended up 20 years later having stepped up all the corporate ladder and understanding that that system was not a machine at all, and then how we were treating and how we organized it was not working. So this is how it ended up my management story. And so Kopernicana is the fruit of that. Is like an attempt to tell this same story to the other companies, other entrepreneurs and management and executives, and bring other practices that support a company in working how it should be. So a bunch of people trying to do stuff together. So this is pretty much my story. I live in Milan. I'm back in Milan finally after 15 years traveling around. So this is also good.
Amazing. And that's it. Control and coordination mechanisms we need when a bunch of people trying to do stuff together, right? And they can come out very differently. And I would like to dive into the topic directly because I know we don't have much time and you guys have so much to tell. Haluk, we've had not just one conversation, but a lot of conversations by now, I would say. And Latro is a very unique case. And one thing that makes it very unique is that you don't work with budgets or KPIs or OKRs. So my question to you is, can we really get rid of that? And does it still work? And how would that work?
Yeah, I think we can get rid of them, and it does work, at least in our case. And when I try to speak about this, the people sometimes misunderstanding if we are getting rid of all the transparency or all the measurements or all the metrics. So what I try to tell is that the names, related to probably the KPI, OKRs, or budgets, or even sales targets, means different to different people, but we just remove all these words or all these meanings from our ecosystem, our organization model, because we believe these are more on the controlling side. This comes from controlling each other. This comes from fear. That's what we believe. That's what I believe. So instead of that, we have radical transparency. So we still do have those numbers, those metrics, which is being used to define the OKRs or define the sales targets. We still have all those things, but it's just open, just like a dashboard to people in the company, and we let them to drive however they want, together with those numbers, instead of giving them as a target or using this as a carrot and stick. So we don't use that like that. So it's kind of like we believe it's more or less like a car. That's I always give this example. The car manufacturer gives all these metrics, gives all this transparent, all the numbers in front of like a dashboard to the driver. They let the driver to decide which way to go or which speed to use, or all the decisions are being taken by the driver as just with using this as a dashboard. So there's no target in the car. That's what we are just understanding, and that's what we are trying to do. Let me just give this as an entry, but then we can deep dive into that.
Very interesting. I'm thinking, because now you said like the decisions are to the driver practically, right? So how do you make sure that the entire team is actually then going into the same direction, let's say?
Yeah, actually, the whole team going to the same direction is, again, maybe too difficult to say. So what we do is, when we make this transformation of self-management in our company, the very first thing we did was to define why we exist, so define the culture. So the culture consists of the value, principles, and the purpose. So these are kind of the for my opinion, just like, again, come back to the car example, these are the rules, like, don't cross in the red lights, or just drive in between the lines, don't cross the lines too much. So we kind of define together with the team what are cultures, what are rules, what are where we are heading to. So going from A to B, you define with the cultures. And again, it's a matter of a discussion always in the team. They discuss, they make the decision together. So it's a collective decision. And when I say the collective decision, I have to make sure there's a completely different subject, but I always make this big difference. It is not consensus decisions. It is consent decisions. So the people in the team are just like several bunch of drivers. They just tell each other which direction they will go, and all these discussions and directions are in the cultural corners inside the cultural things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we can get a picture of it. Very interesting, and we definitely go deeper into it.
Yeah.
Francesco, how do you use performance management in your projects, but also within Kopernicana?
Well, Yeah, that word Haluk is right. That's so disclaimer. I'd like to fight with Haluk, but the problem is finding the tiny narrow piece of conversation where we actually can fight, because I suspect that we will agree on most of the things, because one thing I agree with him on is words are like kind of sometimes are misleading. So performance management, when you say performance management, to 95% of managers, executives, and mostly HR people will think about how we can measure individuals doing their job, right? And that's
Right.
simply not possible. I would like just to say this is not possible. So this is a thing of 100 years ago that is not possible any longer. It's not even possible in the production line, because the systems that we work with are so complex and interconnected. There's no way we can measure a single performance of a single individual, not even in agriculture, right? So the performance you can measure is the performance of a team of an entire complex system. And it's like the car instruments, right? You don't measure how fast the single piston moves, because that's not relevant. It's not the thing that you need. You measure how far the car goes, how fast the car goes, how high the temperature is. So major things that are the result of multiple different things, right? So this is number one thing, because that's the perspective that if you take that perspective as real, the one that we can measure performance of individuals, everything else goes wrong, because that's a basic concept that is actually impossible now. So that said, we don't measure individual performance, not in projects, not with clients, not in our company. And so you stop using measurements as a tool to control people. And that's another thing about the words. So control, both, I don't know in Turkish, but surely in Italian and English, has at least two different meanings. One is, I know what's going on. I control this because I don't know, I can control how high is the temperature of my room. That's a way of using control. Or I will make things go where I want to, right? I will I will I control, meaning I will influence the results of something, right? So in a complex organization, I think the second meaning is very hard to practice specifically. It can be practiced on a general system, but not specifically on something. But the first still very relevant. You want to know what's going on, not just you manager, everybody. So the point is, performance management is actually, probably best said, performance measurements is to know what's going on. So it relates a lot with the radical transparency that Haluk was saying before. So the more information everybody has, the better the system will work, the company will work, each of us will work. So I would say this: we use OKRs, we use it in our company, we use it with our clients, we think are very useful. But I see the downside. Well, I see the dark side of the potential of use of those systems to control people, meaning to influence how they go. And that's actually the thing I think we should discuss.
I have one comment to that, Francesco, what you said. The more information that we know, the better, practically, right? Now, but there's a shadow side to it, right? To every radical transparency. Like, how do you make sure that there's no over communication? How do you make sure that people are actually picking out the information they actually need? Because it comes with somewhat, probably I would call like something like a common economical sense. Like if we look at the P&L, does everybody understand, okay, when are we break even? When are we making a profit? What, so does that then come with like an extra attention in onboarding and training, or how are you? And this question goes to both of you, because both of you actually mentioned the matter of transparency. How do you deal with that?
Well, somebody said measure what matters. I saw the message coming through. That's that John Doerr's mantra on OKRs, and that's one thing. That's one point. So still, the car has a lot of numbers of measurements, but the display that your dashboard, your display, has few of them. Like, I don't know, 20, 25. Cars has thousands. They have thousands of numbers. So one thing is that. So whom there are people in our company and in clients that knows how to rearrange information to make it better understandable. So that's one effort that should be put in place, together with probably a lot more training. Zingerman, they train everybody in accounting, at least basic skills on accounting. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I stick to the example of the car because I think it's very appropriate. For example, OKRs is like a tool to just decide together where do we want to go. It's like a navigation system. So a navigation system turns complicated information, like, I don't know, coordinates, into very easy to understand indications, like you just turn right and turn left and then go ahead for a couple kilometers. OKRs are like that. If done properly, it's like we decided as a team, or two different teams, two different things, where do we want to go, and we keep track if we're getting there. So this is how I think about that.
Haluk, how do you do it at Latro or in your other ventures?
First of all, in Latro, as Francesco says, is very much the same case for us. We try to give minimum financial education to each person, so the transparency makes sense if they can really understand it. So in the minimum level. And the good thing is, it's not only about trainings or education, but while they are doing it, while they have the meetings, because in Latro we have the business rhythm. Business rhythm means we have every week one meeting, every month another one, and every quarter another one, and each team are following the same rhythm. And in these meetings, the teams are, by the way, they define their own metrics, and they go through their metrics, how they are going, how they are doing the stuff. And while they are doing it, the persons who would be knowing less will learning during that process. But other than that, we also try to give some trainings as well. So as Francesco says, actually, it's probably some wording differences, because if you can really use OKR just for indicator, just for checking what is going on and making decisions collectively, then it's okay. But for my experience, when you define OKRs, the persons defined OKRs are the hierarchical bosses. So usually I don't see in companies that they define OKRs altogether. And it would make sense if everybody defines the OKR, and not everybody, even each team, just like a startup, because in our case, not this team's OKRs, let's say in your language, we don't have OKR, but not this team's metrics are equal to this team metrics. So each team defines their metrics differently, because their journey might be differently. So we try to individualize the experience of metrics. So we also start with OKRs. We never start with the KPI or target, but there was a very short moment, like a month, 1 month in Latro, we start OKR. But unfortunately, we have seen that is moved immediately to the manipulated to the personal performance or team performance side. Because OKRs, when you define it, it's for me very difficult to keep them away from the performance discussions between each other. And that is the problem of OKRs, for my opinion. But when you say, hey guys, this is all the numbers that you can use, just like Francesco said, we also create thousands of numbers in the company, and we tell them, you choose which ones makes more sense for you, and you put it as your metric dashboard. So you see, we don't use the OKR, we don't decide the OKR, we let the team to decide about their own metrics to see how their ship is going, if they are going to the right direction, or whatever they are applying is giving the result or not. So again, the checking the metrics, looking at the dashboard, having that transparency is very important. Otherwise, you will be blind. You wouldn't be knowing if your collective decisions are correct or not. But if you move a little bit to the OKR or KPI or target sides, then another thing involves, which is personal performances or team performances. Doesn't matter. When the performance involves, that takes a little bit away from the freedom, from the innovation, from the creativeness, from the courage of trying new things. That's actually what we have experienced. So if the things work like the Francesco says, which is OKR is completely out of that internal performance discussion, then I would be say okay. But I find it very difficult, again, to the human, I guess, psychology to move that out completely. So instead of that, we just say, hey guys, these are all the numbers, and you decide about your metrics. And as a team, you check. And every once in a while, if you want to change the metrics, just change it, because if your new project, you need to see another metric, put it back into your dashboard, and remove another one if you are not using it. So we try to remove all the numbers that they are not using. That's what we are trying to do. And again, I'm not saying it's a perfect model, because it's just like startups. Some teams are managing it very well, some teams are not that good. But at the end, we are giving opportunity to people, to the teams, that they run their own way within the culture again.
I just wanted to say it's not completely free. Obviously, you have your framework in place, the values, principles, and purpose.
Yeah. And also internal, also like again, in Latro, everyone has first they are the explorer of Latro, and second they are the member of their own team. So everybody's first priority is Latro. So that means if one team is not making good decision, it is being also transparently open to all other teams with the results. So it is in everyone's power to ask why, and to ask if you need my help because you are not going well. So that's kind of like an internal, again, transparency also creates a kind of they support each other. We check each other. So I always say I have fired myself as a boss in Latro. So I always tell when someone joins in, don't worry, there is no boss in the company. But you could be worried because everybody else is boss. It's kind of like it's kind of like it's a heavy place. I tell you, it's not like that you can really freely just hang around. You can freely do stuff, but you gotta do stuff.
And just one thing, and then I'm going to give the word to Francesco. But what's really interesting in that is that you need a very high actually commitment, but also identification with the organization, and not itself with the role or the craft the people are doing. If in first instance, people are there for the organization, right? And secondly, they are there for the team. So this is opening up a complete different conversation I would like to have with you once, Haluk, but maybe later. Francesco.
And all these things are also connecting with the income model. So it is naturally that way, because each team creates profit, and the profit goes into the pool, and everyone from the company, regardless of their team, gets from the profit share from a complete different calculation model, not because what they have created as a team. So everybody is responsible of each other. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no. Francesco, I bet you want to comment.
Yeah. Because I think this opens up lots of different things we should discuss, because yeah, we basically said, this is what I understood, that Haluk had the need to break down um, the hierarchical, traditional, bureaucratic stuff, right? And this is like, this is right. This is right, not only because people are working better that way, because the company will work better. That's no doubt. I've seen it. I've seen that. I've seen that happening in Kopernicana. I've seen that happening in the clients that we supported doing that, and I've seen results of Haluk's company. So to do that, you need to break it down. I mean, to break it for real, right? And he's also right by saying that OKRs are, for example, in Google, yeah, this is public, right? In Google, they don't use them right. Like I know they invented the name. They didn't invent the approach. The approach was before that, but they use it right for the few years that there was a culture that supported actual, um, collaboration, co-creation, and that stuff. As soon as you put a management hierarchy in place, and you don't start taking down the specific idea that the managers, just because of that, just because it is or she is a manager, will have a better idea on whatever is working, that their team is working. You need to get rid of that. If you don't get rid of that, OKRs will be just like MBOs. He's right. Alok is right. The point is, but if you use OKRs like MBOs, and even MBOs, if you read, the MBOs were invented in the 1954, okay? And they're still used. 1954. The Practice of Management is the book that they are here. Peter Drucker, The Practice of Management, 1954. And he invented MBOs pretty much like OKRs should be. So they were like, don't measure individual contributions, don't measure specific production of every single person. And then they went there because it's a tool for power, right? And it's a tool for power, and that's the point, right? But if you use OKRs like MBOs, you're losing twice, because OKRs are a lot more complicated than MBOs. Don't use them that way. Just tell the people whatever you want them to do, and don't get rid of all the theater that you have to do, because OKRs, they start working when you put all the theater in practice. So when you start asking people, okay, where should we go? What should we achieve? What do you think it's appropriate here? What do you think it's appropriate there? And when we see a lot of, well, we work on a lot of OKR projects for like clients of 10, 20 people, all the way to clients of 100,000 people, okay? And the projects that actually work, are the ones where the space for collaboration, conversations, discussions, even fights around the subjects the strategic subject you want to put in place, are actually happening. The other stuff is not relevant. It's not really relevant if you achieve or not the targets that you set. That's not the thing. I mean, it's in the long distance will be relevant that you never achieve your target. But in the short term, the important thing is, are you having conversations about that? Is the people involved in deciding how to implement the strategy? And that's actually the point. So Haluk is doing that by changing names and enforcing the culture. And I think that's smart, because when you change a name, you say, we are not using that system. We all relate to the name of the system, not to the practice of the system, because the practice is the same everywhere. The hierarchical practice is just one: do whatever your boss is good with, right? That's the only rule. There's nothing else, right? So we give all those names to the single specific rule. So you got rid of names. What we're trying to do is to kind of how do you say that in English? Like rehabilitate the name. This is the hardest part. We're doing the hardest job, Haluk. We're trying to rehabilitate the name, saying that thing was invented. Even this thing was invented to give people autonomy. Because you talked about carrot and stick. The other great discovery is the carrot stick is shit. That thing doesn't work. It works hardly for dogs, hardly, but it doesn't work well for humans. No, nowhere, not even for kids. The only thing that works is intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation requires mastery, autonomy, and a purpose to connect with, right? So I think that's pretty much the point. So OKRs should be used the way that Haluk is using their metric. The only thing that they add is that we decide together where do we want to go. We kind of say it. We kind of write it down. And of course, you can change it. But if you have to change it, you need to gather together again and say, we should change that. And why should we change that? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? And whatever, and then change it. So this is a good OKR practice, for example. Change an objective midterm is super good practice, but it's bad if somebody does it alone. If a manager does it alone, that's a bad practice. If the team decides we want to pivot somewhere else, that's good. It's a startup like super standard practice. Midterm, we pivot because this thing is not working. We're moving somewhere else. I think that the hardest part of this conversation, I'm just trying to figure people working in a traditional company, because neither Haluk, Net, or me are working in a traditional company, right? We work in companies. Kopernicana is a company where people work how long they want on the projects they want, from where they want. They got paid pretty much how much they want, pretty much, not like completely, but pretty much. There's profit sharing in our company, profit sharing in Haluk company, and a traditional company. All this stuff are not there. So all these things are required to empower people, are definitely required. It's not enough just to have OKRs or not have OKRs. It's like there's a lot more. So you're probably right. There should be another conversation following this one. Find something we can actually fight, Haluk and me. We are.
But I don't want to see you fight. You know that. But you're right. Like the roll-off is already.
It will be like the Lepant battle. You know, the Italians and the Turks.
No, but I think, Francesco, what we haven't really talked about is also the intention of it, right? The intention of engagement and ownership and a different kind of decision making, right? With the end result of creating responsive and adaptive organizations. I mean, you said it because today I was reading through your LinkedIn because I just wanted to, refresh my mind. And then I was like, okay, you're just saying it, at some point, yeah, management practices were successful, but they're just not sustainable. We cannot go forward like this. We need change, and with this kind of accelerating changes in the world. So how can we respond? How can we adapt to that? And I think that's it. Why we are, or why you guys are on this way of progressive work and creating different kind of pathways, experimenting with different kind of things, as for example, changing language. But it's not just changing language, because the whole practice is different, because the intention is different, right? If you go in there and you do that to actually create ownership and engagement, the whole process follows, which becomes in the end a different kind of result. So I think it feels like if we talk about OKRs, we also need to talk about decision making.
Yeah, actually, what I'm realizing also just now is it is impossible for you to put us in fight with Francesco, because as you were saying, the philosophy is the same. So when the philosophy is the same, you just change the names of the words, or you just don't change. So yeah, what Francesco is trying to is a lot harder, because the sales targets, the budgets, the OKRs or KPIs, their existing meaning is all on the hierarchical systems, because it's 99.99% is being done by hierarchical systems, and that's why probably it's very difficult. And in Latro, as soon as we started with OKRs, because of the people's all life goes through the hierarchy. It's not only in the companies. I was always talking this with in my speeches in Turkey. You born with hierarchy, the hierarchy at the family, the hierarchy at the school, hierarchy at the companies for sure, hierarchy at the politics, at the streets, hierarchy in the military that we do military service. It's kind of like a hierarchies all over the world. So as soon as you start anything from a hierarchical perspective, then the performance come into the picture very quickly. I don't know why, but the people are so much willing to check the performance each other. They just love to talk about the performance and discuss about the performance. What we try to do, and that's again the main subject of my speeches, which is just remove this friction. Because all we are talking right now is internal, right in the company, OKRs, KPIs, whatever. The customer doesn't give a S to this. they don't care. I mean, what the hell is your OKRs, KPIs? It's all internal, right? And all this internal friction, okay, we do it for a good purpose. We want to, sell more, and we want to give a better products, and we want to, create more value. Okay, we do it for good purpose, but we are dealing so much internal friction that we forget about the external need, or we forget about, as a companies, we forget about to be good for the people, to be good for the customer, to be good for the world. We forget about it because it's all internal friction. So in Latro, mainly, what we're trying to do is just remove this internal friction, because that means nothing. That means nothing to your customer. That means nothing to your neighbor. That means nothing to the world. It's just your internal, BS. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. So so all these words are the things that we are discussing. I think we need to discuss more. And I really like the approach of hire. They say zero distance to customer. We need to discuss how we can develop systems, models with no internal friction. So we don't deal who's my boss, who's my manager, who's my, who am I gonna report to, who's going to report me? Who cares? Your customer doesn't care about your reports. So we're gonna start talking about, let's work together and let's create something valuable for the world, for our customer, for the people. And if we switch that mindset, all these things become secondary, or not in second, not in third, maybe fourth, maybe fifth important part. It's not important. So that's kind of like the main the philosophy, I guess. And another one is you have to start trusting people, internally and outside, your customer, your supplier. And then that's kind of like getting worse. And I'm hoping in some moment it will turn back. It's getting worse in the world because of all this, like the climate change, the wars, the viruses. We keep trusting each other less and less and less. That's why now the right wing is increasing very high, because it's just everybody is becoming, they go in and they start to trust the next person less and less. And that's kind of another thing that's why we love these OKRs, KPIs, or sales targets, because we don't trust him. We have to make sure that he is stupid, he doesn't know what to do. Let me put this the numbers so he will understand where to go. Otherwise, he will not. Otherwise, he will mess around. He will not be part of it. So it starts from the trust also.
Yeah. Can I add something to this, Tina?
Mm-hmm.
Was that like
yeah,
yes?
you go, and I'm gonna swallow for now, but I'm gonna come back.
Because we didn't touch the budget part. And I think that's also very relevant, because we don't do budget either, but we do it. And I mean, we don't, but we kind of do it, because there's like in all the other conversations that we have, there's a polarity that should be managed. Like polarity, I mean, two things that are very far away, that like kind of look incompatible, but they are actually needed, both of them, right? Like in inspiration and expiration when you breathe, right? You cannot do this in both in the same time, but you have to do both, right? So and this thing, when a complex system is in place, you need both autonomy and alignment, kind of, right? You need both. You need autonomy because it's made of people, and And now it will be made of people and AI, and AIs are autonomous. So it would be even worse. The need for that would be even more. But you need autonomy because people work when they're autonomous. If they're autonomous, they will work way better than if they're not. And you need alignment because you don't want a company to be torn apart because everybody's going in a different direction, right? So you need both. And the way that Haluk is doing in their company, I think it gets there. The way we interpret OKRs kind of get there because we share common goals, and then we keep discussing and sharing and maybe changing together, right? But when it comes to a budget, the problem with budgeting is that during the past 100 years, we collapsed it into one single word, budget. Three very different things. One is how we manage costs, how we manage investments, and how we achieve results, right? When a company does their budget, they do those three things together. They do it like a year in advance, and they kind of start thinking once they've done their budget that they can foresee the future. So the problem is you can't foresee the future. That's then a complete there's clarity around that. There's no way man can predict the future. So any company, so most of the companies in March 2020, they took their budget and they flushed it down the toilet because whatever they brought there was not appropriate any longer, right? So number one, you cannot predict the future. And two, the three things, costs and revenues and investments, have very different dynamics. So if you put them all together in the same document that you draft a year in advance, you will screw up three times on costs because you cannot predict what's going on revenues because you cannot predict the futures in the markets, and investments because you usually tie them to the two other things, and they're not tied. They're not connected. Right? So this is the other thing. They're not connected. Investments are not connected to revenues and costs, right? But in the same time, people need some clarity. They need to know, okay, we don't have budget. My colleagues say that all the time. We don't have a budget, but how much can I spend? How much money do I have to do that? What's an appropriate rate of revenue that we should achieve this year? So the thing is, do not throw everything away because you still have the need to kind of know some boundaries, right? So there's another interesting conversation. There's this beyond budgeting roundtable that has a lot of conversation on that. And I think some of that stuff is like really, really helpful for any company. So start doing it like for example, we do a percentage of whatever's going to be the revenue. That's our budgets. So it's not a fixed budget, but I don't know, 15% of that will be the money that we will spend. And every month we count how much money we can spend, and we just spend it. Right?
Haluk, any comment to that also?
Again, we probably use the easier way. We don't have the budgets. Probably very similar. We just changed the name, let's say, because we call them scenarios. And I think that word makes a lot more mistakes because we do scenarios. So like we try to do, if this happens, what we will do. If this happens, what we will do is kind of like that sales bring us to where, or this sale bring us where to down. So it's kind of like with the scenarios, we let people, hey man, if you do that sales, that is what you will get. If you do this sales, that's what you will get. If that's, inflation goes to that, that's what we will do. If inflation goes this, that's what we will do. So we try to create a very flexible and very alive model. We call that the scenarios, because scenarios is different than budget as a word, as far as I know, English, because you have 2-3 different scenarios so the people can see, oh, if I do that, that's to happen. If I do this, that's what will happen. And at the end of that day, if they are a profit share partner, it means they probably will do for better, right? Like with all these scenarios, but it's not the budget, because the budget is like you fix it and you don't let the people think on it. The budget for the the conventional companies, and you do it for a long time, which is in a fast-changing world. It is meaningless. So the scenarios is a lot better because you still give them the responsibility. Another keyword in Latro, one is, as I said, the transparency, and another one is responsibility. So you let everyone to be responsible of their decisions and actions and of their own performance, which is going to result the which scenarios, not the budget that I give. It is the scenarios. You'll do what you'll do. You'll see where you go. Again, you always change the perspective to the people's angle, and they have to be responsible for their own actions, which they take or which they didn't take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I can see the time is up. Also, that's why
I think I would let's bring it to a conclusion, I would say. But what's really interesting, like, I mean, we didn't come to a okay, yes or no or whatever. I think at the end we came to a yes, we need it. But it depends how, right? And then we use different kind of principles or framework or methods to actually kind of like set a frame to make it possible for people to actually decide for themselves. I would question a couple of things on that, I guess, because points like language came up, the metrics came up, but also like purpose, principles, values, which is things that are not easy to put into language. So you kind of like look for alignment, but I think both of you are working then with metrics to align, which is, letting facts speak, I guess. So a lot, because you both are entrepreneurs, so you both go via the business model.
One last word. I know Francesco is going to kill me, but we don't use also alignment. We say synchronization. Because alignment, you align people to one direction. Synchronization is you synchronize all kind of like a more jelly method. So we try to find a different way of wording it. Probably we are doing the same, but we don't get alignment because alignment is bad. You don't align people to one place because it is good to synchronization. So we call it synchronization. Sorry.
I would have gone into that alignment part because I'm a branded kid in that as well. Aligning language, aligning that, and in the end, you don't have any diversity in there anymore, right?
Yeah,
so
that's why synchron. Don't align, synchron.
Yeah. I resonate with that, I have to say. But guys, it was such a pleasure. I'm trying to make a summary of it. It was.
Don't do that.
I think we should do a follow-up in person in Istanbul pretty soon, if it's possible.
Yeah, we should do that.
Just throwing out that.
If it's possible, we'll figure it out, and then we live stream again.
Right, from the streets.
From the street. Let's do that. You guys enjoy. Thank you so much. Grazie mille and Evola. And
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.